Today we are getting out the row covers for 3 rows of the flower farm. We are going to go put those row covers on the peonies today and get some hoops on there so that we can start protecting it from animals, weather, things like that, and just basically give them some protection. We got a text this morning from the neighbor who is up the hill, which you can't see, way up beyond the barn. And she said they started getting irrigation water. Wanted to check with everybody else to make sure that all of their irrigation pipes are open. And the reason for that is because we are all on a lateral here. A lateral is essentially a piped irrigation system that comes off the main canal, which is up the hill, way back yonder, and comes off of the main irrigation canal. So there's an irrigation canal that feeds all the farms out here and the whole Swally district, which is the district we're in. And then off of that canal is piped irrigation, a sort of network into this area, and those are called laterals. There are 8 people on our lateral, 8 houses out here. Theirs is the first stop for the irrigation, and they've got a very big pond up there. It's a giant holding pond. From there it flows into the other irrigation ponds out here. So we have one of the bigger ponds. Our responsibility is to make sure that water's flowing into here, but not too soon, so that everybody else can get their water too. So it's a bit of a complication. So far, nothing. But we'll be back out here checking the water situation on a regular basis. Looks like we have some peonies starting to grow right here. There. So some of the peonies are starting to come through. Good thing we're getting the hoops on here. And we'll get the row covers on because that'll protect them from the frost. Take a look at the temperature. But we've got all the hoops on now. I'll show you that. We're just cleaning up the landscaping fabric here so that the grass doesn't grow into the landscaping fabric and everything's a little more manageable. Let's have a conversation about landscaping fabric. As you can see here, we have landscaping fabric out in the field, and this is pretty common, I think in the West, in drier areas. I've seen a lot of videos online of flower farmers using landscaping fabric, and I see a lot of it in this area, and I'm guessing that it's very useful for keeping the humidity in the soil and preventing weeds. So that's the primary purposes. But the problem is with the landscaping fabric is that it's made out of plastic, and although it's durable plastic, it only lasts about 3 to 5 years, and little by little it starts to break down. If you get dirt on your landscaping fabric, well, weeds love to grow in dirt, so I suppose most people think that weeds grow from under the ground, but actually weeds grow from above the ground because the seeds come in from elsewhere and then they drop onto your dirt. So once you get dirt onto the landscaping fabric, you start growing grass and weeds. That gets into landscaping fabric, and then the landscaping fabric becomes a great environment for growing weeds. And I know that if you're running a farm and you're making a living off of it, it's really a cheap and easy way to stay on top of the weeds and keep humidity in. And hey, I won't judge. We haven't grown in Central Oregon yet. It may be a really tough environment, but here's the rule on our farm, which is if we can grow without landscaping fabric, we're going to. Not criticizing or judging anybody using landscaping fabric, but on our farm we're going to try to avoid it. Also, I mean, let's just put it this way: it's not very pleasant to look at, and this farm is as much about aesthetics as it is about function. We officially have all of the hoops on the peony beds. 1, 2, and 3. So we put the hoops at about 5-foot spacing There's maybe 13, 14 hoops. I thought it would be a lot easier than it was, but because the hoops are a conduit piping that have been bent, you have to go through each one, kind of put like a stake in the ground, make a hole, put the hoop in, and there's I don't know, maybe 40 some hoops that we had to put in the ground. So they're all there. And now this week, it's supposed to drop down into the 20s at night around Wednesday. And because the peonies are starting to come out, we're going to put the row covers on just to protect them. I don't know a lot about peonies, and I don't know if they need to be protected at that temperature, but we're gonna put them on. We're just experimenting, getting a feeling for what works, what doesn't work. But that's it, end of that project. We finished removing the wire fencing from this section of the fence line. So that actually opens up this whole section now. This is the area to the north of the house where it's just kind of wild space, I suppose. It's not farm section. It's got some trees up here. Nice little section that's kind of natural. And this was all fenced off, so you couldn't really kind of get to it and walk through and just enjoy the property. You can hear there's a lot of wind today. There's another winter storm coming in. They're always coming in. We've been working all day in wind. So we've got the fence line removed here, the wire fencing. These posts are going to stay here for a few days. We have an excavation company coming out this week to put in the new septic system, and I said, hey, while you got the backhoe out here, can you just latch onto these fence posts and then just pull them out and drop them on the ground. The irrigation water has started flowing. It's about 10 o'clock this morning. We came out here earlier to check and there was nothing flowing, but now you can actually see that there's water flowing. The reason there are two valves is because we need back pressure on the entire lateral for the neighbors that are up further to get their water in their pond. And so if we close the lower valve, they get back pressure and they get water up into their pond. And then when there's enough pressure and everybody's got their water, it flows out of the top valve. So things are mostly working. The bottom valve is mostly closed. I'm going to contact the neighbors and make sure they're getting water in their ponds and they don't yell at us. And we've got water going into the pond. Well, in a little bit of time, we can start to irrigate the pasture and the hoop houses and everything. An update on the septic system. As we said in previous videos, we were going to have a new leach field installed. The company came out on Friday and we were super excited to get that leach field going. And they started trenching and, well, things didn't go quite as planned. Anytime you're digging into country property, you might find things. So what happened was they came and they started trenching here. And the strategy was to put a diverter valve onto the current septic system, attach the new leach field onto that, and then when the new leach field is fully approved and the county signs off on it, just turn the diverter valve. The old leach field was so bad that when they started cutting into the existing pipe going to the existing leach field, well, the leach field was not draining at all. In fact, there was a lot of back pressure on that leach field on the septic tank, and when they started cutting into it, well, what happens when a bunch of pipes are under pressure? They start spraying. Wasn't too bad. It's just, okay, everybody stop. Call the pump company out. Let's get the septic tank pumped out. So that was problem number one. As they were trenching out here, well, surprise, surprise, nobody knew it, but in here, we bumped into another thing. If you can see here, right there, turns out that the neighbor's irrigation supply line to his pond goes in through our field somewhere, and nobody knew it. And as this backhoe was digging, we struck a geyser. We had a flood for about 5 or 6 hours. That was an irrigation line coming in from Swally Irrigation, 116 gallons per minute, that feeds our pond, as I showed you. And well, it was gushing everywhere. So we had about 4 pumps running for about 5 hours. We had all the water companies out here trying to figure out what was this pipe. And in the end, we concluded that it was irrigation water, and we asked the irrigation district to shut it off all the way back up at the original feed. We just could not get this thing shut down no matter what valves we turned off. They finally got it under control later in the day, and they fixed this pipe, at least temporarily. They're going to have to come back out and fix it some more. And so tomorrow they'll pick up the irrigation project, or the septic project, and they'll repatch this pipe and then get the leach field in. Spoke to the county inspector earlier, and we got the sign off on the septic system. So now they're going to start backfilling all these trenches. Looks a little bit like World War I out here, but now we're going to backfill these trenches and seal it all up, and we'll be good to go. The temperature is going to be 25 degrees tonight, maybe a little bit colder. So we decided to put the row covers on. And the first thing you notice is that we installed the hoops, but we have the row covers on the ground. Well, that's why you always want to try things before you really need them. We put all the hoops in, and then we went to fit the row covers on the hoops. They don't really seem to fit, or at least we haven't figured it out yet. So not enough sunlight tonight to figure it all out, and it's getting cold out here, and you can see the sky. Well, I guess the sky looks a little bit bright, but it's a pretty impressive sky tonight here in Central Oregon. So we just laid the row covers on the ground and staked them in the sides, and that should be fine for tonight. I read online that peonies can do just fine down to about 25 degrees, and that's where we're headed tonight. So the row covers will keep the frost off them and hopefully keep them alive. So that's it. Hoops are up, row covers are on, but the two aren't working together. All sorts of things to figure out. Until next time. There are some blackbirds in the cattails. Surprisingly, they hang out here kind of all year up in these cottonwood trees, or these poplar trees actually. Now that the water is flowing, they seem pretty excited. There's water flowing into the pond. They've moved down here into the cattails. And I think these blackbirds have been anxiously awaiting the return of the water.